First off, let's tell everybody what Proposition 1 is.
Proposition 1 is was a citizen-led initiative that came forward, got enough signatures that the county certified or validated enough signatures that had our commission put on the ballot in November a question as to whether or not the citizens of Shelton would like to replace the current city commission form of government with a council manager form of government.
Is there a reasoning for that they've told you? I know as a city you have to just give out the facts. You can't.
Right.
To you it doesn't matter what the government is.
Absolutely.
Did they tell you a reason?
The people that dropped off the petition?
Yes.
They didn't give one to me. They may have mentioned it to the county when they went over. I think at some of our meetings people have come forward and provided some comments about transparency and different things that a 7-person council provide that a 3-person commission doesn't. But in terms of giving us anything, we didn't ask. They didn't need to give us anything. We just passed that along to the commission.
You're just doing what's being asked.
We've mentioned a couple times last week that as far as anybody at the city knows, this is the first time a citizen-led petition in the city of Shelton has made it onto the ballot. So it's a bit of new territory for us, but certainly when the citizens speak here and they ask for something to be put on the ballot, that's what we do.
The commission kind of, I'll say, not necessarily drug its feet, but was hesitant to, because they could have gone with just putting it on the ballot instead of a citizen petition. Was there any real discussion between you and the commissioners on that issue?
Everything that you would have heard from me, I
What?
mentioned in public. And
Okay.
so the idea about how to move this thing forward, Tracy brought it up a few months ago, asked us to research it. We did some research, and really the question was, how do you move forward? It's been a long time since anybody in this state has changed from a city commission. From what we can tell, the best resource for us has been the city of Raymond. And not that I want to have to go to the city of Raymond to learn how to do things, but it's actually helped in this case. They moved from a commission to a council, I think, in 1997. So it's been a while since anybody's moved this way. We are the last city commission form of government. But when she asked us to take a look at it, we brought forward some information, in part from the city of Raymond, but also from the Municipal Research Service Center, which is a big resource for cities like ours. And they helped craft some language between a city commission and a council manager. And then our city attorney also took a look to figure out legally how do you actually move something forward. So in this case, it is either that the city commission put something on the ballot, which they chose not to do in this case, or that a citizen petition is brought forward, and then through that process, the commission put it on the ballot.
So when you said council manager, why that form?
That is the one that was requested. So initially, the staff put together a resolution because we were directed to bring forward a resolution for the commission to vote on, and that is what was requested from Commissioner Moore. And then when the petition came forward, it was actually listed. So you can't put a ballot measure out asking people to change to one or the other. It has to be a specific form of government, and that is the form that was brought forward to the citizen petition.
And that's pretty close to what we have now. Is that?
Well, I guess it depends. So in its purest form, a city commission is supposed to be that each commissioner is elected to a specific area, and then they they direct that area. So at some point in the history of this city, it's likely that the public safety commissioner actually was the director of public safety, the public works commissioner directed public works. But at least for the last 30 years, this city has had a city administrator, now a city manager, that actually direct staff, that each department has its own director. So in its purest form, no, they're quite different. But in how we operate now, we actually have a 3-person commission that direct me, and then my responsibility is to manage the day-to-day operations. So there are some similarities in how things operate.
A lot of my questions are what if
Sure.
questions. And
Sure.
I know that there's what if is. So if it were to pass, and we're just staying on the theme of the manager, your duties are not going to change.
My duties, I would assume, would be very similar to how they are now. We would likely staff committees because we would have more, in that case, council members. But in terms of the day-to-day operations, the line is much clearer when it comes to council manager. Because we're the last city commission, the rules for city commission, the RCWs that have been written by the state, have not been updated for a while. And the amount of cities that operate a council manager, they're constantly updating those and providing much more clear delineation between what the roles are for the legislative and the executive branch of government. And while my day-to-day work would be similar and the city staff wouldn't see much change, it would be much more clear about what the council in that case does and how they interact with the decisions that are made.
Again, if it passes, there's 3 on the commission now, and
Correct.
there would be 3, they would just basically be grandfathered into their seats, right?
Correct. One of them's up for election, but the other 2 have 2 more
The
years.
seats
Right.
themselves would just become council seats,
Yeah.
instead of commission seats, and you have to fill 4.
Yeah.
Is that going to be, it's going to be an election, anybody in the city can file. Are they all going to be up for 4 years, or are they going to stagger them, or is that to be decided?
That will be decided by the commission in some discussions with our city attorney and also with some groups, so Association of Washington Cities and I mentioned before the MRSC.
Mm-hmm.
The recommendation would likely be that we stagger them so that eventually you end up with 3 seats and then the next election 4 seats open. Right now we have 1 seat open and then 2, and we don't want to run an election every year or multiple times a year.
But doesn't that in itself kind of pose a problem? Let's just say you have 4 people that would be up at once, and so you have the majority of the commission, or I'm sorry, council would be changed over. That's okay.
Well, I don't think a change of this magnitude is ever really easy, but my faith in the staff that we have and the commission to work through these problems the next few months is very high. So I don't question the fact that it's going to be difficult work, but if we've proven anything in the last year, it's that difficult work isn't something we shy away from.
If it's to pass, and you need to get those 4 on, would that be the next general election, or would you hold a special election?
In the resolution, it was written, the resolution that we put together in response to the citizen petition, it was written that if there's a need for primary, so if you end up having multiple people that file for any particular seat, there would be a primary in February and then a general in April.
Okay, that's a real quick turnaround. Okay, my notes here. Again, yet to be determined, I imagine, but would all the council seats be at large, or are you gonna go region or of the city?
That'd be up to the city commission.
Okay.
I think that we'd take a look to see if it makes sense. Right now, they're not broken up into districts, but that's one of the decisions that we'd bring forward for the city commission to decide on.
Earlier, you talked about the Commissioner of Public Safety, which is the mayor.
Right.
I don't know if a lot of people out there know the difference. I mean, they may just have expected that the mayor is the mayor.
Right.
You know, he is in there for another 2 years as the mayor, and in this form, if it were to pass, he'd be grandfathered in as the mayor, correct?
That's a question that we're still working through.
Okay.
And we know that anybody that still has years left on their term would certainly fulfill those years. And then in terms of what it actually looks like if we're 8-9 months from now and you have 7 people that are, 4 people coming on board and you have 7 people, we would take a look at that. But under a council form of government, amongst the 7 of them, they determine one person to serve as the mayor for 2 years terms or 2 year sections.
It's
Yeah.
2 years, it's not just every year, or is
The
that
way-
again in the bylaws?
That would be up to them, but the general rule that you see is 2 years, but that's another one of those things that the commission would get to choose.
So a lot is to be determined based on the outcome of the election.
We have tried to take this one step at a time, and we don't want to put a lot of work into something that may not be there, but
Right.
we are prepping for the next step. So what everybody is able to take a look at now is the basic information about what's in front of them with Proposition 1. We put that out this week, and we're preparing for the election that's coming up to provide the basic info But the next step, we have done some of the work, and obviously I'm able to provide some of the what ifs, and
What ifs, yeah.
most of those answers are going to come back to a citizen commission decision should it pass. But the final decisions, I think, we'll hold off until we need to actually research those, because at this point, we're just trying to figure out what the citizens here want to do.
Okay. The city's position in this is just to provide information.
That's it.
And you can't go one way or the other, because to you, it matters, but it shouldn't matter. I mean, your job as city staff is gonna be the same.
It doesn't matter, and if you went out and talked to any of the people in this office or any of the people in public works or working for the police department, I'm sure they'd tell you the same thing that I will, that it doesn't matter to us if there are 3 people, 7 people, 20 people, that we come to work every day, we do our job, and we get direction from a city commission or potentially a city council. But in terms of how many serve on that, that's up to the citizens and what they want to represent them, and we'll do the best we can regardless of how many people are serving.
Have you done analysis on what this could potentially cost the city?
Yeah, that's another thing that will ultimately be up to our city commission to determine. So right now, salary-wise, we spend just around $75,000 a year on salary. And we've looked at what other cities pay. Association of Washington Cities puts together a very extensive list on commission for us, and then council salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of what it will cost, we don't have any doubt that should the commission want to keep or even lower the amount of money that we budget for a 7-person council versus the current 3-person commission, that we would have any problem with that.
Okay. I think that's all that I wanted to ask about, and because a lot of my questions are more on the for and the
Right.
against, and here's information.
I'm the basic information guy.
Yeah, man, I understand that. Have you heard of, or has anybody kind of come to you with an opposition? I mean, on the street?
You know, people don't really talk to me about this that much. I think they recognize that this came from a citizen petition, and it's not something that city staff are bringing forward. So I haven't had a lot of interaction about this. I hear more about roads and the things that are going on with infrastructure in town, but this one hasn't really been a topic. But we certainly invite people to come down and ask questions.
Okay.
As you mentioned, we can't provide a yes or no. That's not what we're doing.
Right.
But we can provide the basic information. If people want to know what the function of this government is compared to a council, we can certainly provide that info. I did have somebody come in about a month ago and just asked about how a city commission works, and we provided some information to him. But we're open to provide that info. People can do that on the 27th of this month at 6 o'clock here in the Civic Center. If they want to come out and ask some questions at Shelton Out Loud, we'll answer the best we can, and people can always call the city or stop by and ask those questions as well.
Are you, or is there any concern about voter turnout at this point? Because the turnout was relatively low for primary.
I think it's typical for what you see in an off-election year, so an off-presidential election. The voter turnout that we saw, I think, was around 28%, and when we compared that to primaries in other off-presidential elections, it wasn't any less. We certainly had more candidates than we've had in a long time. We had 4 people running for 1 seat, so that was exciting to see. And in terms of voter turnout, if you're not running a presidential election, the turnout is always going to be a little bit lower. And so I don't think that we'll have that much of a concern. If people are going to take this seriously, I trust that they're going to come out and voice their concerns, and they're going to vote the way that they see fit for the city. So in terms of being concerned about it, I'm not concerned about it, and I think that people that are serious about the direction of the city of Shelton will come out and vote one way or another.
And this just needs a simple majority.
Correct.
Okay, because it's not a tax issue,
Right.
it's a performance. Have you, in your time here, have you just found that people don't even realize there's a commission instead of a council, especially for somebody coming outside?
That's a good question. I don't think that people know that it's different than other cities. So people that have been here for a while, it's always been a commission as long as most people have been here. So since the 40s, that's the form of government we've had. So if you haven't left the city of Shelton and been active in other cities' governments, then you probably don't notice. People that come in, I do get questions about how this works. And when I go to city manager meetings or other meetings at the Capitol and other cities around, we are pointed out frequently as the last commission form. So that's where I get it most, when I'm outside the city and people run into me and they'll say, "You're the guy from the last commission form of government. How do you do it?" So it's different in that respect, but people here, they're used to it because it's been like that for 70 years.
Well, what I hear from people coming from larger cities and retire here or move here, they're like, there's only 3 people running the city. They're shocked at that.
It's different.
Yeah, but it's really, how different is it from, say, the county commission or a port commission?
I'm not sure about the port. We deal more with the county. I know for the county commissioners, those roles are more full-time roles.
Mhm.
So from my experience with all 3 commissioners, that is a job. And the difference between that and this is that this is not a full-time job. Our folks are working our meetings, they serve on other boards, they attend events and represent the city. But in terms of the function of the roles, I think that's the main difference. At the county commissioners, when I call over there, they're in their office, they staff an office, and they're a little closer to the original model of a commission. Our commission over decades has morphed a little bit into a different role.
Okay. I think that's...
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in. It's good to talk about it.
Yeah.